Riverton, Colorado, is a quiet and picturesque community nestled in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. With a population of approximately 10,000 inhabitants, Riverton's community life is active and close-knit, with local events such as fairs, markets, and cultural activities bringing residents together and fostering a strong sense of belonging. Despite its serene appearance and reputation as a safe place, Riverton's tranquility would be severely shaken by a tragic event that would test the cohesion and stability of its people. Karen White, 39, was a central figure in the community life of Riverton. Her role as a mother of two and wife to Michael White placed her at the heart of family and social life. Karen worked as an event coordinator for a local charity organization, where her passion for art and dedication to culture helped organize prominent events in the community. She was known for her generosity and her ability to connect with people, making her a beloved and respected figure among those who knew her. In addition to her career, Karen was deeply involved in her children's lives, Eric and Emily. Her dedication to her family was evident in her active participation in their extracurricular activities and in her constant role as a supportive figure in their lives. Karen maintained a warm and welcoming home, and her ability to balance her professional and family responsibilities made her an admirable figure. However, despite her seemingly perfect life, Karen began to suspect her husband, Michael, of infidelity, leading her to face a personal conflict that would eventually trigger a tragedy. Michael White, 42, was a highly respected doctor in Riverton, known for his professional competence and commitment to medicine. His reputation in the community was impeccable, and his success in the medical field had positioned him as a key figure in the lives of many residents. Michael and Karen had been married for 15 years, and their marriage was seen by many as an example of success and stability. However, behind the facade of respect and success, Michael maintained a secret life that starkly contrasted with his public image. His clandestine relationship with Rachel Peterson, a local artist, began to expose the cracks in his marriage. Michael had been trying to conceal his infidelity while managing the growing tensions at home. The duplicity in his personal life not only jeopardized his relationship with Karen, but also made him the prime suspect in a criminal investigation that would shake the community. Rachel Peterson, 20, was a local artist known for her work in galleries and her involvement in cultural events in Riverton. Despite her presence in the town's art scene, Rachel led a relatively private personal life. Her relationship with Michael White, though kept secret, had a significant impact on her life. Aware of the issues in Michael's marriage, Rachel found herself in a complicated and vulnerable position. Rachel had been involved with Michael during a period when he was trying to balance his family life with his extramarital relationship. Although her connection with Michael was a central aspect of her life, Rachel also faced public exposure and scrutiny when the crime came to light. The complexity of her relationship with Michael and her role in the White family tragedy made her a focal point in the investigation and the subsequent trial. Eric White, the eldest son of Karen and Michael, was 17 years old and a bright, reserved young man. Despite his youth, Eric was known for his dedication to his studies and extracurricular activities. His relationship with his parents was close, and his life had been marked by the stability and constant support of his mother. The news of Karen's murder and the subsequent scandal involving his father was a devastating blow for Eric. The emotional impact of the tragedy, combined with the pressure of facing the reality of his father's betrayal, placed Eric in an extremely difficult position. His life, which had been relatively sheltered until then, was upended by the violence and drama surrounding his mother's murder. Eric had to cope with the pain of losing his mother while also confronting the consequences of his father's actions. On August 15, 2002, the day began like any other in Riverton. The town woke to the usual sounds of daily life: morning traffic, children heading to school, and stores opening their doors. However, the tranquility of the morning was abruptly shattered when Lisa Johnson, a close neighbor of the White family, made a discovery that would change the course of her day and the entire community. Lisa, who lived in a house adjacent to the Whites, had gone outside to water her plants. While going about her morning chores, she noticed something strange in the Whites' backyard. An unusual mess and a stain on the ground caught her attention. As she approached to investigate, The horror of what she found left her frozen in shock. Karen White's lifeless body lay on the grass, showing clear signs of a violent confrontation. The scene was disturbing. Karen had been found in a disheveled position, with signs of being struck by a blunt object. The brutality of the attack was evident in the visible wounds and the disordered state of the area. The garden, usually neat and well-kept, was now marked by the chaos left behind by the crime. Horrified and unsure of what to do, Lisa immediately called the authorities to report the tragic discovery. The first to arrive were officers from the Riverton Police Department. Captain Derek Lawson, a veteran with 20 years of service, known for his sharp mind and ability to solve complex cases, led the initial response. Alongside him was Detective Emily Carter, a young and promising investigator with a growing reputation for her meticulousness and attention to detail. Upon surveying the scene, they confirmed it was a homicide case. The police proceeded to cordon off the area and secure the crime scene as the detectives began their initial investigation. Captain Lawson and Detective Carter conducted a preliminary assessment of the crime. Essential evidence was collected, including blood samples and fragments of potential weapons. The scene was carefully documented, and the investigators began interviewing neighbors to gather any relevant information. During the investigation, the detectives discovered that Karen had been struck with a blunt object. Although the exact weapon had not been found at the scene, the signs pointed to a violent and personal confrontation. News of Karen's murder spread quickly through the community, causing a mix of disbelief and shock. Riverton's residents were perplexed at the thought that such a violent act could occur in their peaceful town. The media pressure and the emotional impact on the community added urgency to the investigation. Captain Lawson and Detective Carter faced the challenge of unraveling the mystery behind Karen's death and discovering who could be behind such a heinous crime in a place where violence was virtually unheard of. Following the tragic discovery of Karen White's body, Captain Derek Lawson and Detective Emily Carter led the investigation with urgency and determination. The crime scene, located in the serene backyard of the White family home, offered few clear clues, but the investigative team was determined to solve the case. The first task was to identify potential suspects and gather testimonies that could provide insight into the motive behind the murder. Captain Lawson, known for his ability to handle complicated cases, focused on reviewing the backgrounds of Karen and her family. The first step was to interview Karen's neighbors and co-workers, seeking any information that could reveal personal or professional conflicts. A key witness was Lisa Johnson, the neighbor who had discovered the body. Lisa recounted how, while she was outside watering her plants, she noticed unusual disorder in the White's garden. She described the scene in detail, pointing out bloodstains and the disarray in the area. Lisa mentioned hearing strange noises the night before, but could not clearly identify their source. Although her testimony was crucial in establishing the timeline of the crime, it did not provide direct details about the potential perpetrator. Detective Emily Carter took charge of analyzing the physical evidence found at the crime scene. Blood samples, fingerprints, and fragments of potential weapons were collected. During the analysis of the fingerprints, it was discovered that some prints belonged to the White family members, but no additional prints were found that would point to an external intruder. Detective Carter also reviewed reports from nearby security cameras, looking for any footage that could capture the crime or the arrival of potential suspects. Although the recordings did not show direct images of the attack, they offered insight into the surroundings and possible activity in the area. One of the first suspects to be interrogated was Michael White, Karen's husband. Michael was visibly shaken by the news of his wife's murder, but his behavior also raised some suspicions. Detective Carter, with her keen eye for subtle details, noticed some inconsistencies in his story. Michael had claimed to be at work during the afternoon of the murder, but his workplace records did not fully corroborate his alibi. Detective Carter questioned Michael for several hours, attempting to clarify the discrepancies in his account. Michael explained that he had an important meeting at his office, but after reviewing documents and security footage from his workplace, investigators found gaps in his alibi. While his grief seemed genuine, Captain Lawson and Detective Carter could not ignore the inconsistencies, which raised doubts about his involvement. Rachel Peterson, Michael's lover, was also interrogated. Although she appeared genuinely distressed by Karen's death, Rachel was in a delicate position due to her relationship with the main suspect. Detective Carter conducted a thorough interrogation of Rachel, trying to understand her relationship with Michael and any possible motive she might have for being involved in the crime. Rachel admitted that her relationship with Michael had been complicated, but she insisted that she had nothing to do with the murder. She provided a detailed account of her day, claiming she had been at home during the time of the crime and presented a series of witnesses and evidence to corroborate her version. However, investigators continued to keep a close eye on Rachel, as her connection with Michael kept her at the center of the investigation. Another relevant suspect was Eric White, the eldest son of Karen and Michael. Although he appeared to be a young man deeply affected by the situation, investigators couldn't rule out the possibility that his stress might have influenced his behavior. Detective Carter interviewed Eric at his home, trying to understand his emotional state and any possible motive he might have for being involved in the crime. Eric spoke about his difficult relationship with his father and the impact of the tragedy on his life. He expressed his pain and confusion, but he also appeared cooperative and willing to assist in the investigation. Detective Carter conducted a detailed interrogation, attempting to determine if his distress was a genuine reaction to the loss or if there was something more hidden behind his behavior. Although Eric seemed to be a victim of the situation, the investigation continued to explore all possible connections and motives. As the investigation progressed, the detectives continued gathering evidence and reviewing testimonies. The community of Riverton, though shaken by the crime, cooperated in the investigation by providing information and witnesses. The pressure to solve the case increased, and Captain Lawson and Detective Carter were determined to uncover the truth behind Karen White's murder. With each new lead, the investigation delved deeper into the dark secrets of the White family and their connections, slowly moving toward the case's resolution. As the investigation moved forward, Captain Derek Lawson and Detective Emily Carter began to notice some discrepancies in the behavior of one of the White family's closest friends, David Turner. David, 45, was a longtime neighbor and close friend of Michael White since childhood. Initially, David seemed like just another witness in the case, someone who could help reconstruct the events of the day of the murder. However, as his life was scrutinized and testimonies were reviewed, certain inconsistencies began to emerge, placing him at the center of the investigation. Detective Carter was the first to notice that David had avoided speaking with investigators after the crime, claiming to be too distraught to give statements. When he was finally interviewed, David explained that he had been at home all afternoon, recovering from the flu during the time of the murder. However, a few neighbors mentioned seeing David leave his house several times throughout the day, contradicting his version of events. Detective Carter then decided to conduct a more exhaustive second interview with David, seeking to clarify the discrepancies. During the second interview, David displayed noticeably nervous behavior. Captain Lawson questioned him about his relationship with Karen White, and David admitted that they had had some disagreements in the past, but insisted they were merely differences of opinion. However, as the conversation progressed, it became clear that David harbored some resentment toward Karen. He mentioned that she had interfered with his friendship with Michael and had created distance between them. This statement raised a new red flag for the investigative team, as it indicated a possible source of tension between David and the victim. Meanwhile, Detective Carter obtained a warrant to search David's house, hoping to uncover additional clues. During the search, they found a pair of work gloves with stains of a reddish substance, apparently blood, in his garage. Although David argued that the gloves were old and that the stain was probably paint, the forensic team sent them for analysis. In the meantime, a series of text messages on his phone also surfaced, suggesting growing resentment toward Karen in the months leading up to the murder. In one of those messages to a friend, David expressed frustration over how Karen was ruining Michael's life. Although this comment alone didn't directly implicate him, it did indicate a potential underlying hostility. The police also began looking into David Turner's financial background. They discovered that he had been going through serious financial difficulties. According to reports, David had lost his job a few months before the murder and had unsuccessfully tried to borrow money from Michael to cover some debts. This discovery opened the door to a potential financial motive, considering that Karen was known to control the White family's finances. Suspicions grew as investigators considered the possibility that David may have seen Karen as an obstacle in his attempt to get financial help from his old friend. In a third interrogation, this time under more pressure, David continued to deny any involvement in the murder. However, his story kept changing slightly every time he was asked about the details of his alibi. When Detective Carter mentioned the bloodstained gloves, David became visibly agitated. He attempted to justify his presence near the White's house on the day of the murder, claiming he had dropped off some tools that Michael had requested. However, Michael denied asking for anything from David that day. With each new contradiction, suspicions about David grew, and the investigative team began to see him as a potential suspect with a clear motive and a shaky alibi. Finally, forensic analysis of the gloves found traces of Karen White's blood, further implicating David Turner. While this was not enough to arrest him outright, it did prompt the police to dig deeper into his involvement. The detectives decided to keep him under surveillance and continue searching for any evidence that could directly link him to the crime. David Turner, who had previously been considered just a close friend, was becoming a key piece in this complex puzzle where tensions, secrets, and resentments threatened to further unravel the peaceful facade of Riverton's community. As the investigation progressed, evidence of the secret relationship between Michael White and Rachel Peterson became public. Detectives uncovered encrypted messages and deleted emails that confirmed Michael's infidelity. This new twist in the case began shifting suspicion from David Turner toward Michael, as protecting his secret could have been a stronger motive than any dispute between friends. Additionally, the key piece of evidence was the discovery that Michael had been caught on a security camera near the crime scene during the estimated time of Karen's murder. Detectives Lawson and Carter reviewed the security footage that had initially been overlooked and spotted Michael walking near his house, despite his claim that he was at a business meeting out of town. Michael's presence near the crime scene at such a critical moment, along with the incriminating messages found on his phone and confirmation of his affair with Rachel, shifted the focus of the investigation toward him. On October 20th, 2002, Michael White was arrested at his office on charges of first-degree murder. The police arrived in the early morning, catching Michael off guard. He tried to remain calm, but the tension was evident on his face. He claimed he didn't know what he was being accused of, repeating that he had been out of town all day. However, the detectives already had enough evidence to justify his arrest, including phone records and the security camera footage. During his interrogation, Michael stuck to his version of events, insisting on his innocence and claiming that it was all a misunderstanding. However, when confronted with evidence of his secret relationship with Rachel and the inconsistencies in his alibi, Michael became evasive and visibly nervous. The police also found traces of dirt from the garden on the shoes he wore that day, which matched the soil in the backyard where Karen was found. The trial began in November 2002 and quickly turned into a media spectacle, attracting national attention due to the scandalous details of the case. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Mark Henderson, presented a strong case against Michael. They showed the jury the security camera footage, incriminating messages, and evidence that Michael had accessed the garage that night, where the tool used to inflict Karen's injuries was kept. Henderson argued that Michael had killed his wife to prevent his affair with Rachel from becoming public, fearing the personal and professional fallout it would cause. The defense attempted to portray Michael as a victim of unfortunate circumstances and suggested that the evidence might have been tampered with, but they struggled to counter the prosecution's arguments. Key witnesses, including Rachel Peterson, testified about her relationship with Michael, revealing that he had confided in her about his fear of how Karen might react if she found out. Other co-workers who corroborated Michael's dishonesty in his statements also played a crucial role in the trial. Finally, after 3 days of deliberation, the verdict came in. Michael White was found guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, emphasizing the premeditation and deception involved in the crime. During sentencing, Michael remained expressionless, his face hard and cold as he listened to the court's final decision. The trial had revealed the true nature of his double life and his motive for eliminating his wife, who had uncovered his infidelity and planned to expose him. Michael's conviction brought some closure to Karen's family and friends, but it also left deep scars in the Riverton community, which would never be the same. After Michael White's conviction, Riverton was left deeply shaken. The small town, where most residents knew each other, had been wrought by the violence and deceit hidden behind what seemed like a perfect family. Karen's family, especially her mother, Martha Peterson, was devastated by the loss. Martha temporarily moved in with her sister in a nearby town to process her grief. The absence of her daughter was a wound that wouldn't heal, and while justice had been served, the void left by Karen was irreplaceable. Rachel Peterson, Michael's young mistress, also faced the consequences of her role in the drama. After the trial, she moved to another state to escape the stigma that followed her everywhere. She became an almost mythical figure in Riverton, her name whispered in hushed tones and furtive conversations at the local cafe. Though she was not charged with any crime, her connection to the killer made many in the community view her with suspicion. Rachel tried to rebuild her life far from Riverton, but she always felt the weight of what had happened pressing down on her. Meanwhile, David Turner, who had initially been one of the main suspects, returned to his old life, but not without carrying the aftermath of the case. Though he had been exonerated, the shadow of suspicion left an indelible mark on his reputation. Some in Riverton still whispered about his involvement, and David began considering moving away to start fresh somewhere new. His friendship with Michael was destroyed, and memories of Karen haunted him, especially during the long, lonely nights. Over time, Riverton tried to return to normalcy. The White family home, the site of the murder, sat vacant for months before being sold to a new family, unaware of the tragedy that had taken place there. The community, however, did not forget. The story of Michael and Karen White became a local legend, a cautionary tale about how hidden passions and lies can tear apart even the most seemingly perfect families. Thank you for joining us in this case, filled with secrets and tragedy. If you enjoy real crime stories, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any episodes. Until next time.